Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Game Week 26 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zofa. My co host, Late Riser, and I are joined by our friend, Big Man Bucker. How's it going, buddy?
Thanks for having me, Zoff. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Everything's going well. It's wildcard season. Spoiler alert, all three of us are on a wildcard this week. So this should make for an exciting pod.
Yeah, I think the thumbnail kind of gave that away. What about you, LR? How are you doing? How was the game week?
Shit show, bro. I had 75 minus 8 points. I was one of the few who owned Robertson and Ketia and Darwin. So a lot of negative variance, was on a minus 8 as well. So fell from 100K to about 195K, which puts me pretty much in the position I was when Game Week 17 started about. And I think this is going to be a fairly long pod because I think, if we're trying to build a wild card until the end of the season, and don't worry, people that haven't wildcarded or have used certain chips, etc. We're probably going to do a team by team analysis and talk about whether the discussion is relevant from a wildcarder's perspective and a non-wildcarder's perspective. I expect this to be a long one, but I must say, I mean, I was watching Pras on burning questions right before this, and I do share his sentiments in the sense that people that are going to wildcard right now, like having considered everything and having looked at things so far already, the chalk wildcard is just there to take, and there is, for somebody like me who likes to differentiate a little, there's just very little scope to do it. Like, I feel like I am cornered into a route where I can't get very creative with my wildcard. But it's important that I exercise patience this week, because what we thought about how FPL existed 3 weeks ago and what FPL is today, things have changed massively. We were telling everybody sell Martinelli. Now we are considering having Martinelli on our wildcard right now. So it's a very dynamic ecosystem. It's a very dynamic game we play where things change massively week on week. I mean, Chelsea score 4 goals against Leeds, and everybody's going to see like, okay, how do we get them? They have actually a good looking double in 29. What's the plan for Chelsea? So opportunities will emerge. What you perceive is going to happen for the next 8 to 9 weeks when you're charting your plan and making transfer plans and seeing that this is going to happen week on week on week isn't actually going to happen. If it was actually going to be happening, we wouldn't be playing this game. So I'm hoping that the future game weeks lead opportunity. And I do want to give one piece of advice, and that's what I'm telling myself while we're building this wildcard, is what is the assumption that we have right now that's probably standing a chance to be incorrect and has a chance to come through when 29-30 emerges. Like, that is the thought going on in my head, but I might have to be patient for something like that.
Right. Not much point talking about last week. A lot to talk about for the weeks ahead. So let's dive right into it. Start with our sponsor plug. All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below. Right. So there are a lot of unexpected results in the FA Cup. Leicester lost, Spurs lost, Man United won. And now that the landscape has changed a little bit from what we expected. I had to slide that in
there. Yeah, and you still persist with that. It's kind of nice.
So this is just a quick tweet from Krellin, which summarizes everything, and we'll dive into it deeper. So now double game week 27, 4 teams double, 28, 6 teams blank, 29, 12 teams double. So now we know that's by far the biggest double game week of the season. In 32, only 4 teams blank. And now 34, only 4 or 6 teams will double. So that double now isn't going to be a big one. And there's going to be a mini double game week coming up for Newcastle and Brighton at some point around 30, 31, etc. So what this has really done a little bit has sort of reduced the appeal of bench boosts in 34 and 37 somewhat, because only now 3 or 4 fixtures can be added in 34 max. And 32 free hit is something we will discuss later, because going by the bookies odds, the teams we expect to blank in 32 are United, City, Brighton, and Chelsea. So that's we are in terms of the overall macro image. And now we will start discussing team by team. We will look at picks for you guys who are wildcard picks, for guys who have already used the wildcard, free hit picks, etc. Anything to add, guys? Go ahead.
Yeah, before we move into that, I think, why did you choose to wildcard? That's the question I'm asking you. And in what scenario wouldn't have you wildcarded?
I mean, I mentioned on my video yesterday, I had a lot of fires to put out, and this is something I learned last year, is that you can have a good team for the doubles, but it's very important for a crucial part of the season we make games to have the optimal team. So I would sort of be putting fires out a little bit because now I have the Nketiah problem to deal with. I have a bunch of Liverpool guys, Everton with not a great fixture in 28. So I could possibly manage with free transfers, get to 8 to 9 players, but those players wouldn't be optimal players, I feel. I would still have like Tarkowski away to Chelsea and Nketiah, who's now a legit game time risk. It's not even Jesus who's a factor. So things like that. And I feel I can get a good team for 34, 37. The trade-off for those 2 weeks is probably we're going to have certain teams which we are avoiding now. Liverpool, City, etc., who are going to have doubles around that week. I'm going to have likely a free hit to use during then, or I can pivot there using transfers.
Correct. And I just wanted to cite though that if you are somebody that already, some people have been carrying Estupinan and a Brighton midfielder for a while. People have Harry Kane. I mean, more than 50% of the teams own Harry Kane. If you have 3 or 4 such players, I think there is potential to maybe postpone the wildcard to 28, 29, or maybe 33 in the season. And what's essentially going to happen is that the pivot that we are going to make as 26 wildcarders going into 33, 34 is get more of City, United, and Liverpool, because these are the teams that have doubles then. So that is the pivot that we are going to be making. So if you have a strong core of Brighton is a team that has doubles throughout this entire ecosystem. They are the most number of doubles scheduled that have pending. So, you sort of hold on to that, anchor onto that and move forward. But based on your team setup, this is the reason why we are wildcarding. Maybe you shouldn't wildcard. Anything to add, Bakar?
Yes, I mean, firstly, you were saying that you don't have enough room to sort of differentiate on the wildcard. I don't agree with that. I think there's plenty of picks where you can sort of go different. For example, there's Martinelli who's come up. A lot of wildcards will have Odegaard, others will have Martinelli. There's Reece James versus Kepa. You can decide on who the second Newcastle is. And similarly, the Brighton midfielder. Yeah, I mean, there is a certain algorithm which suggests selling Haaland. I don't necessarily agree with it this week, but it is a strategy which is sort of popular among the analytics. But anyway, I mean, there are other things as well. For example, the Brighton midfielders, Matoma, March, McAllister. I do think there will be some variance in the wildcard drafts this week. I don't think it's necessary that you're going to end up with the same, let's say, 15 players every week. Even the Brentford defenders, Arsenal defenders, there are certain players where you can differentiate. Shar will speak about. So firstly, there's that. Secondly, I mean, Zob mentioned why he wildcarded. I wildcarded for similar reasons, but again, one of the main reasons is that I didn't have any Brighton Brentford, and I wanted to be in a position where I can maximize game week 27, 29 with maximum doublers. At the same time, it helps us to navigate game week 28. And now that we know that game week 29 is going to be the big week, the big double game week, going for a bench boost in that week potentially is very important. And similarly, it's not just that, the fact that Spurs have a double now is very important. Sorry, don't have a double. They have good fixtures in 27, 28, Forest and Southampton. Similarly, getting the 3 optimal from Arsenal, because I know that I own Nketiah. I assume both of you do as well. There are plenty of factors which all add up. And again, I just think this is very team dependent. And as you said, if someone has Kane, Matoma, I think possibly wildcarding in 28 could even work out as a better strategy, because by wildcarding in 28, you can then ignore Brentford. And I'm not exactly a huge fan of tripling up on Brentford. It's just that you sort of have to go for them, because if you're wildcarding this week, then they have a double in 27, which looks okay on paper. But if I was on wildcard 28, I would completely overlook Brentford, and I think that could possibly set us up better for game week 29.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Brentford in 29 is one of the weaknesses I'm feeling about our 26 wildcard. Like, I don't really like that double in 29, especially when it comes to the defenders, because I don't see a clean sheet in that game week. So that's one of the things. We'll get into it team by team, but yeah. Nice to zoom out and just sum up the helicopter. It's important to mention that because, people who have not wildcarded and might not necessarily need to wildcard might see 3 of us on wildcard and be like, okay, no, with the feeling FOMO, the strategy makes sense and they want to press the button. But it's important we just set that up right at the front. Let's go team by teams off.
Right. So guys, I've made very old school notes today, all handwritten notes and everything. We are well prepared for this one. Let's start now. So Arsenal is the first team we will talk about. Now, Arsenal have no blanks or doubles till the end of the season. But what's interesting is their fixture run. in the short term. They have Palace at home and Southampton at home in the 2 blank weeks, 28 and 32. They have a good fixture this week against Bournemouth. 27, they have Fulham. Fixtures in 30, 31 are not so good. Fixtures from 34 onwards, also not good. But in the short term, having a core of Arsenal players, I think, is a good idea. Where are you guys on Arsenal? Pranil?
So Arsenal's an important differentiating factor between people that wildcard now and wildcard later. Now, I think everybody's going to have Saka, and it's important to have him in your team. I think, the template pretty much picks itself, and we'll talk about that later. But there is a fifth midfielder position if you're looking at Rashford not going anywhere, if you're looking at Saka not going anywhere, if you're assuming that we're all going to be on 2 Brighton, there's a fifth midfielder spot. Now, that fifth midfielder spot is where that second Arsenal spot in attack sort of becomes a conversation, whether you're looking at Odegaard, whether you're looking at Martinelli. The other options in that space are whether you're looking at a Chelsea midfielder. The only outside shot option is Raheem Sterling, whether you're looking at Maddison. I think these are the sort of players we're looking at for that fifth midfielder spot. There are 2 or 3 things, when you talk about the chalk template draft later. We will probably need to bench that fifth midfielder in Gameweek 27. Now, Gameweek 27, Arsenal are playing a Fulham team that's without Paulinho. Now, it's a very, very strong fixture if you consider that they are without their midfield general. When are we going to start thinking about getting rid of Arsenal players? And do we need to think? Pras made a great point that if you're anchoring to a free hit 32, which is Southampton at home, 28 onwards, you can actually start thinking about selling or getting rid of your Arsenal players, because game week 30 onwards, their fixtures read Liverpool away, West Ham away. Then in 32, which a potential free hit week, they have Southampton at home. After that, they have City at home. In 34, which is a double game week, they have Chelsea at home, then Newcastle away, then Brighton at home. So the fixtures don't look that good. So it's a debatable conversation to have when it comes to Arsenal players. But the thing is, the next 3/4 fixtures right now for Arsenal look very, very legit. And I struggle with this because I want to differentiate. But Bournemouth, let's face it, is a 3-0, 4-0 sort of game. There are double-digit hauls for that Arsenal attacker that you pick. Whether that's Odegaard or Martinelli is a conversation to have, assuming Saka is a fixed one. Same for Fulham away, same for Palace at home, and potentially for Leeds at home. They're a sure thing. Like, why bet on somebody else when you know that somebody who's a pick in currently the best team in the league at immense value is just a sure thing? Probably the opportunity to differentiate there comes a little later.
So just before I move on to Bakar, I think you mentioned 28. I think the opportunity arises in 29, not in 28, because by 29 we have an idea of the results, and we might have an idea of which fixtures are going in 34 and 37, and we can plan accordingly. Bakar, your thoughts on Arsenal?
Yes, I agree with Pranil on the point that he made that we're probably going to be benching the second Arsenal mid in 27. But again, what is the opportunity cost of it? The opportunity cost, the way I look at it, is to possibly pick someone like a Maddison right now. I mean, that could work out. Maddison can be benched in 27. They have Chelsea, even though that's an easy fixture these days. But in 26, he has Southampton away, and Southampton are really poor these days. So, I mean, there is the option of going and picking someone like a Maddison to set yourself up for the double game week 29 in advance. But as you say, there are goals to be had in the Bournemouth game in particular this week. And I mean, I won't be surprised if Arsenal won 4 or 5 now there. So again, this is one of those things that if you were wildcarding in 28, you won't have triple Arsenal. I think I would definitely not have triple Arsenal. But if you're wildcarding this week, it just makes sense when you look at the expected points in the Arsenal players to possibly pick the second Arsenal midfielder over someone like a Maddison, just because of the fixtures in front of you, especially the home games.
Yeah, Bakar, also, I don't think it's just wildcard 28 that's an option. I think if you can comfortably get it in 28, given the ingredients of your team, even 29 wildcard is an option where you can sort of divulge into the stronger doubles, which maybe 26 wildcarders might not jump into right now. That's where we are. Zoff, where are you on the Odegaard versus Martinelli debate? I mean, I was looking at Odegaard, who's sort of like somebody who's going to be playing 90 minutes week on week. You know what you're going to get from him. But there has been a little bit of a shift in terms of what Arsenal are doing the last 2 games. And Nketiah was carrying an injury. I don't know why Arteta didn't mention that in the press conference earlier, because I got bitten by him as a pick. But playing with Trossard, I noticed in the second half against Everton, he was pretty much playing as centre forward. So, because he's playing with Trossard, who's sort of a false nine, the position between Martinelli and Trossard is sort of fluid and they interchange a lot. The two goals at least the last goal that Martinelli had against Everton came from the centre of the box. And he was placed there in the centre of the box many times. Do you see this changing later? And also another macro factor is if you're potentially owning Martinelli and Saka, and you're looking to get rid of an Arsenal midfielder come 29, for a doubler. We could even think of getting rid of Saka instead of Martinelli at that point based on how this has happened, because we also know that Martinelli did his best work with Gabriel Jesus back in the day because he's also a more fluid forward. And are you worried about Martinelli maybe playing 70 minutes or 60 minutes every game compared to Odegaard's 90? Is the upside differential because he might play as a centre forward a majority of the times worth it over Odegaard? Where are you with that?
So the thing I look at with Martinelli is, again, maybe the last game was an anomaly against Everton, but he generally thrives when there's more space in the more difficult fixtures. Now look at the fixtures we plan to play him. That would be probably in Bournemouth and Palace. These are, again, deep block defenses, where I think Odegaard has a chance to drift in and be that extra guy in the box. So I think these are more Odegaard fixtures than Martinelli fixtures specifically. And you're spot on that I think Martinelli does work much better with Trossard. Trossard is a bit more like Jesus, where he gives Martinelli more space to come inside, and Nketiah is always in those central areas. But we just don't know. You might just see Nketiah start again in 27, might see him start in 28. That all depends on Arteta's whims and fancies, right?
Will he though? Because honestly,
it depends. We don't know.
Very, very likelihood, and it's important we discuss this because we're holding that second Arsenal midfield position, assuming we are going to pivot to a doubler in 29 for Bournemouth at home and Palace at home.
Yes.
So it's 2 games. So it's worthwhile chasing upside if you look at it just from the lens of 2 games. You know what I'm saying?
I understand, but there's upside with Odegaard as well. Upside with Odegaard as well. It's just that because he has the set pieces and all that stuff. So a little bit of recency bias might creep in with Martinelli because he just got the haul recently. Bakar, you're saying?
Yeah, he scored like four goals in 3 games. So, I mean, his minutes for the short run are secure. But the thing is that even against the Everton deep lying defense, he got 2 goals. I mean, he outscored Odegaard comfortably last night. So, I mean, it's sort of easy to build a narrative, but it's very difficult to say who will outscore who in the upcoming weeks. But in my opinion, because of the fact that we're likely to get rid of the second Arsenal mid by let's say game week 28, 29, and I obviously think that Martinelli now should be secure in the short run. Let's say for game week 28 and game week 26, that might make Martinelli more appealing. I mean, obviously there's the risk that he can get taken off at 70, but I mean, I think it's a 50-50 call. I don't think it's as clear as you might think it is.
Yeah. Which way are you leaning at the moment?
On the flip side, one of the things that I like about Odegaard is that, as Pranil mentioned, there might be a situation where you're sort of short in cash and that you might want to get rid of Saka by game week 28. So in that case, if you have Odegaard, that makes more sense.
Game week 29.
Odegaard is game week 29, sorry. So in that case, if you have Odegaard, that makes more sense because Odegaard over the long run is likely to be more secure than Martinelli.
Yeah, but also game week 29 onwards, if Gabriel Jesus comes into the picture, then Martinelli just becomes a better pick also. So if you're looking at somebody, if you're somebody who's your
Trossard is still around. I mean, Trossard is still around. Who knows? I mean, whether he keeps getting those 80, 90 minutes.
Also starts post 28.
That's it. That's the point. That's very hard to say. I mean, over 2 fixtures, I won't be surprised if Martinelli outscored Odegaard. But the point is that if I'm looking at someone over the long term, then I would go for Odegaard.
Which way are you leaning at the moment, Baka, on your wildcard? If you're going Arsenal.
I'm 51-49 on Odegaard actually at the moment. But I mean, I can change. This is a slot in my team, which I'm really not sure about.
Off?
60-40 Odegaard.
I'm actually 65-35. Actually don't see myself picking Odegaard. If I pick an Arsenal midfielder, it's Martinelli. Otherwise, I'll deflect to a midfielder from Chelsea or Leicester is where my head is at the moment.
Let's talk defense. Zinchenko versus Gabriel versus White. Where are you guys on that?
Bakar?
I'm not considering White at the moment. I don't think a budget is a huge factor while we're making this draft. And I think having someone over 5 million is actually slightly better, since this position in our team is likely to go to Luke Shaw and give me 29 for those who are wildcarding this week, as United have a favorable double in 29 and their fixtures after that are very good. So having that placeholder makes sense, whether it's Gabriel or Zinchenko's up for debate. I was actually looking at their numbers. Zinchenko's XGI is actually almost double than Gabriel's since the restart, basically. But before that, Gabriel had much more attacking threat. Now, Zinchenko tends to accumulate bonus at a quicker pace as well. I've been debating this in my team, and I was on Zinchenko for a long time until I sort of did some further digging into this, and I saw that Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Fulham, which are three opponents that Arsenal are to face in the next 3 weeks, they have conceded the highest number of chances from set plays post the restart. Now that is a telling stat because that automatically increases Gabriel's appeal. So I think I'll probably go with Gabriel. But had I not seen this stat, I would have probably picked Zinchenko.
Yeah, sure. I don't have a strong preference. I just feel like whatever floats your boat. If you're a set piece guy, go with Gabriel. If you're a value guy, go with White. White's been unlucky, by the way, the last 3 matches. He should have had 2 or 3 assists. It's just that the dice didn't roll on his side. So if you want to play the value game and hold White, I have no problems with that. And I don't have problems with Zinchenko. I'm not really worried about expected minutes when Arsenal are a title run and are going to feel their best team week on week. All 3 are part of the first choice. Just go with whoever you fancy. I don't think either of them, any of the 3 of them are picks you need to worry about. The question is, do you need to go with an Arsenal defender on your wildcard? In a wildcard, we're thinking about, getting maybe 2 games out of that defender spot in Gameweek 29. There are enough players in the game who have clean sheet potential in 26, 27, 28 that have a double in 29. Do we want to commit to that Arsenal defender right now? Is that a spot where we can buy an extra game? That is the question.
Who are those players you're talking about? I would
yes,
say
exactly.
Chelsea.
I was going to ask him the same.
Chelsea probably, but
yes,
they likely blank in 32.
Yes, they likely blank in 32, but 32 is far away. You're buying an extra game in 29, and you're likely thinking of going to be selling that Arsenal defender for Shaw in 29 anyway. So it is an extra transfer.
It's not necessary that you will sell him for Shaw, because you see the 29 fixture Leeds is a 6 to 8 pointer there. Then you have Liverpool away, which is not great. West Ham away is a good clean sheet fixture. 32 when Shaw likely blanks is again a good clean sheet fixture. So most of us, I think, would require, with Kane now in our squads, will require to bring Shaw in for a hit. I'm still not convinced I'll do that move. So the thing with Gabriel, I feel he's a much more sticky pick you can probably hang on to for the rest of the season. Because you have good fixtures in 35, 36, 38. I'm not so confident that Zinchenko's fitness will hold up till then.
I'll tell you what's going to happen if you're just forward planning a little is by the time 30, 31 sort of comes up, the scary fixture is 32, which is Southampton at home. But 33, 34, 35, 36, City away, Chelsea home, Newcastle away, Brighton home. Your Arsenal defender is going to be on the top of your sell list around that time anyway. You're probably going to pivot to a City defender or a Liverpool defender or a United defender because they double in 34. So it isn't that long-term a pick as you perceive it to be right now. So do we need to hold on to that spot right now is a thought in my head.
Correct. It also depends when we decide to free hit, because in 34, let's say we do free hit, then it's not an issue, because 37, they have Forest, which is again a good fixture even if they don't double. So that'll be an interesting spot, I think.
The thing about the Arsenal defender is that for the time being, he gives us the option of having very good fixtures in the short run and then having the flexibility to decide whether or not to hang on to him in 29, basically.
Because we don't know, 29 is post-IB, right? Injuries might dictate you have other problems. That's the issue there also.
But I'll tell you, but it's not even 3 weeks.
If you're going with someone like, let's say, some defender who plays in 29 from Chelsea, then obviously you'd be compelled to hold on to him, right? Rather than swap to Shaw.
Correct.
Like, again, why won't you rather have Gabriel for the fixtures that are coming up?
But if you're going for a Brentford defender right now to maximize fixtures, you have that option of moving out a Brentford defender for a Shaw. Who has a better double.
That I definitely
You know what I'm saying?
I like that more than moving the Arsenal guy.
Yeah, so you know what I'm saying? You actually are buying the extra fixture. Like, if you look at it that way, that's the
let's talk about the extra fixture. Aston Villa and Liverpool at home for Chelsea. Do you see a clean sheet in that spell? I don't see a clean sheet for Chelsea in 29.
I don't see a clean sheet for Chelsea till the end of the season.
So there's every chance it's a single.
I'm the wrong person to ask. I don't see any clean sheets for Chelsea now. We're completely broken.
And I don't know who you guys have on the wild card, but Kepa and Raya is fairly popular on FPL Twitter. So I assume both of you might be on that combination. So doubling up on the Chelsea defense, and it's not as if James's numbers have been really good in recent times as well. So doubling up is definitely questionable.
Yeah, but this is where the conversation of what is our perception of certain players, is that perception going to stick after the international break in 29? Chelsea have good fixtures right now. Leeds at home, Leicester away, Everton at home. Two good home games. They have convincing 2-0, 3-0 wins. James is you two. If James has 1 assist and 2 clean sheets in these 3 games, two of you are going to think about how do we get Reece James into our 29 team. That is going to be the conversation.
No,
That is
I
the
don't think
subject.
so.
Let me finish my point here. That is the subjective judgment or call that you make right now in terms of, because Martinelli wasn't a pick 3 weeks ago, right? Things change, and that happens basis how teams perform. Now, yeah, Potter, and it could go in the other way as well, right? I'm not saying you need to go for James as well, but I just think there is a conversation to avoid a Arsenal defender and get an extra game in 29, because even when you're looking at 27, I see lots of people, going in with 2 Newcastle defenders, and they're benching the second Newcastle defender, whether that's Botman or Shaw. And Newcastle are playing Wolves at home in 27. So you don't actually necessarily need that Arsenal defender too much. Even the game in 28 is Everton at home. It's a pretty good clean sheet fixture. Like, the double in 29 might not look that good, but that's the gamble you're rolling the dice, and that's a subjective decision to make. And I feel like we've done a good job of presenting the pros and cons of both. And that's a decision you need to make. But I think there is a conversation to be had in terms of just dropping that extra Arsenal defender. That's all.
Yes, but another thing that there are actually 2 things that I'd like to mention. And firstly is, that Wells off is here. What are his thoughts on, let's say, if Chelsea do progress in the Champions League, then will James be susceptible to rotation? Number 1, and number 2 is that there's also this point that Chelsea are likely to blank in game week 32. So what do you do with that defender? Do you hide him? It will be difficult, because obviously we'll have players from United, City. That will be another factor which will sort of push us towards perhaps free hitting in 32. And that's not something we want to commit to right now, do we?
Correct. So the UCL progression will play a big part. Like I said, if we do progress in the UCL, then James becomes a bit of a red flag, because the easier fixtures are when Azpilicueta can play. And we are going to handle James' fitness with kid gloves. We are going to be very, very off that. But that being said, James is playing a little bit more of a traditional role. There is some reorientation we need to have from James of last season. This isn't a Tuchel wingback James. He's just not been given that license. He is naturally on some set pieces, but he is not as high ceiling or where we can expect braces from him like we did last season. That is something to keep in mind as well. Should we move on?
Just on Martinelli, I did want to mention Arteta's quote. Shout out to Danny, because he mentioned that and I looked it up. Is how Arteta spoke very positively about the relationship that Martinelli and Trossard have, and how he's center of the box a lot. He's getting more goals, etc., because it's a fluid formation. So I do think this fluid role for Martinelli is going to stick for Arteta, because Arteta is the kind of manager that sticks with something until it doesn't work. I just wanted to add that. That's all.
Cool. But you might want to lower your camera a little bit. We're only getting the top half of your head, just a little bit. Perfect. Cool. Now let's just talk about Villa now. Now with Villa, now they have good fixtures till game week 33, and no blanks or doubles after 29. The 29 double is not great, but it's not too bad either. Chelsea away and Leicester away. What are your thoughts on Villa in defense and attack? Bakar, you first.
I don't think the fixtures in 29 are worthy of investment for their defensive options. Watkins would have been very popular on a wildcard, and in fact, he was in my wildcard drop till Spurs had a fixture. So I think Haaland, Kane, Tony will probably be the template frontline on the wildcard. Else, I think Watkins was definitely worth the consideration, because Villa's fixtures are decent. Crystal Palace at home this week, and then Bournemouth in 28. And even away from home, they're generally free scoring. So those are the kind of fixtures where I'd expect goals from them, but not necessarily clean sheets.
Pranil, do you think it's worth selling Haaland for somebody like Watkins? I know Baker has been pitching that to us. What are your thoughts on that?
No, because I think if you're making the Watkins bet, you make it on, you grow a pair and get him in for 26, and that's likely going to be at the cost of Kane or Haaland, which are big balls moves. But I don't think a player like Ollie Watkins warrants that, to be honest. And if you're looking to pivot Haaland in 28 to a striker, I think you're more likelier to pivot to an Iheanacho or a Danny Ings in 29, or a Felix, who have better doubles in 29. So I think if you're jumping on Watkins, now is the time. Otherwise, there are strikers with stronger doubles in 29.
Iheanacho even.
Yeah,
agree. Defensive doesn't convince me at all.
Worth mentioning though, if somebody was somehow on free hit 29, which is an option, which means you go big on Arsenal, go big on City, etc., and you think about picking the right players in 29, then Villa players become conversation, because if fixtures outside of 29 read Palace at home, West Ham away, Bournemouth at home, Forest at home, Newcastle at home, Brentford away, Fulham at home. So it's a good run of fixture. And I haven't even looked at 29 free hit as an option, but just thought that is the case.
Correct. Anything more to add? Move on to Bournemouth, which we're going to skip
defenders anyway. Don't look at.
Right. Let's just skip Bournemouth. Not much to really talk about there.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Brentford. Brentford are a very interesting team now because they have no blank, 2 doubles in the short term, and they have decent fixtures in the blank week also. In 32, they're home to Villa. At 34, when most teams might double, you might not have a second double game week keeper, but they have Forest at home in 34, which is also helpful. And they generally have good fixtures. After 29, they have Newcastle at home, Wolves away, Aston Villa at home. So I think they're a decent long-term hold, and I think Rea is generally a good keeper. We've seen the way they play. They allow a lot of shots. He's good for bonus and stuff like that. Before we talk about the defenders, is Rea a lock in your squads?
It's a likely lock. I was just digging up some stats, keeper points since restart. Kepa's got 49, Rea's got 46, Pope has 35, and Sanchez has 33. Just looking at saves alone, Sanchez had only 15 saves since restart. Rea has 36, Kepa has 29. So he's one of those keepers that you don't mind. Like Rea is a keeper I don't mind having in my team for 29, despite the bad fixtures, because there's high potential of accumulating saves and bonus points.
Yes, he's first for saves all season. And the thing is that the thing with Brentford is that because they concede plenty of shots, whenever they are to keep a clean sheet, Raya is the most likely among the defenders to haul, because he accumulates bonus quicker than anyone else. While at Brighton, it's different because they don't concede too many shots. So the defenders tend to get the bonus because of their chances created or pass completion. So people like Dunk or Estupinan are at a greater chance of getting bonus points as compared to Sanchez. So definitely Raya is a much better pick than Sanchez. And, with so many games coming up, all those points, even if he tends to, let's say, get one or two save points per game, all those points add up, which is significant. So yes, Raya over Sanchez, definitely.
I think Tony, there doesn't need much talking about. Tony is obviously an auto pick.
No. Before we move on to ending the Rea versus Sanchez debate, I was thinking about it because the variance in keeper points isn't huge, and we've seen at the start of the season where Ward absolutely sucked for the first 10 weeks, and then the moment everybody sold him on their game week 8 wildcard, there was a shift in luck and he started getting save points. He started getting these 8-9 pointers. So something like that could potentially happen with Sanchez. And Zoff and I were talking about this, where Sanchez solves a problem where you have a keeper that you can play in 34 and 37. Plus, there's an additional double for Brighton as well. So while Sanchez isn't really a good keeper pick, he sort of is an horses for courses pick where you're getting a double keeper for 3 additional double weeks. You're buying 3 extra fixtures with that keeper.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Sanchez. We'll talk more in the next section. I have a lot to unpack with Brighton. Let's cover Brentford first because it is certain things to talk. Let's skip Tony. I think Tony stays in there. Just for anyone who's worried about his whole betting thing, we don't expect this to be a factor anytime soon, probably not till 34, 35. But he is on 8 yellow cards. That might come into play. He gets suspended for 2 matches once he hits 10. Go ahead, Pranil, you were saying something?
And he's a good pick this week because he's playing Fulham at home without a Paulinho. Now, that's an important thing. And if he gets his yellow, I think a lot of us are using or needing an excuse to sell him anyway because there are more exciting striker options in 29, because his double in 29 isn't great, which is United away and Brighton away. And there are other strikers. So you don't really mind that also. You just optimize right now and then see what happens later.
Right. Now, the defensive picks are a little bit interesting. It comes down to Pinnock versus me versus Henry. I had a short chat with the Planet FPL Brentford correspondent Tom. His view is there's not much to separate Pinnock and me as such. It's a bit of happenstance that me has got the points and Pinnock hasn't. He doesn't think me is worth the extra. And in terms of
There
stats,
is Zoff
excuse me,
4 inches.
let's not talk about inches while Bakar is here. Don't distract me, bro.
Sorry.
We can go divert to different conversation altogether. Sorry, so yeah, there's not much to distract them in terms of differentiate them in terms of XG. Bonus wise, Pinnock is actually better. Henry, I like when they do play a back five because obviously he's a wing back. He does get forward, but Brentford to me appear to be a set piece team. They're very good at set pieces to target players around that position. So I do like the Pinnock pick over Henry. Bakar, you had some tweets on this.
Yes, I'm in a similar boat where I'm not really considering me because the numbers just say that there's nothing between Pinnock and me when you compare their goal threat. In fact, Pinnock is doing much better for bonus accumulation, both pre and post restart. So that rules me out. But again, it's tough to pick between Pinnock and Henry because a thing that I've noticed is that Henry is playing as the advanced wing back in recent away games, actually post restart, where generally what Thomas Frank tends to do is that he tends to go with a wing back system against the bigger sides. But even against Leeds, for example, away from home, and even against West Ham, they opted with that formation, and Rico Henry was fairly advanced. So if he's playing in that role, then he's definitely interesting. And you were telling me that in a recent interview, Thomas Frank was sort of talking him up and saying that he wants more goals and assists out of him. So maybe that could be a factor. Having said that, you're absolutely right about Brentford, that they are primarily a set piece team. Even after restart, I was looking at the numbers. They're fourth for XG from set plays, which is pretty good. And Pinnock's attacking numbers aren't all that bad. So it's one of those things which comes down to personal preference. If you do think that Henry will continue to play in as a wing back in the away games, then that could be a factor. In the double game week, for example, in the double game week 27, both games are away, so that actually could be a factor. But for example, when you look at this week at home to Fulham, as I've mentioned earlier, they concede plenty of attempts from set plays and they're vulnerable. So this is a fixture where I'd like to play Pinnock in, for example.
I disagree with you, Bakar. It's not as simple as home and away. Tom was very clear that it's more dependent on opposition. He likes playing the 5 against the big sides. When you look at the fixtures against Everton away, Southampton away, I think these are back 4 fixtures. And he mentioned that Ayer is the one who usually drops out. So the right back slot is a bit debatable. Ayer is the centre back who drops out. But Henry, I don't think they'll be playing a back 5 against Everton, Southampton, maybe against United, but against Leicester, Fulham. These are not back 5 fixtures.
But why did he play it against Leeds or against West Ham for that matter? That's surprising, isn't it?
Purely tactical, we don't know. But my point is it's more horses for courses. It's not as simple as away fixture 5, home fixture 4. It's oversimplifying it.
I just also want to give a shout out to Eno, actually, who brought that to our attention in terms of, reading that. He heard a podcast where he mentioned that Thomas Frank did mention that he wants more goals and assists out of Rico. So, I'm of the opinion that you save the money, whichever defender you go with. Don't spend 0.6 more for Ben Mee. Go with the cheaper asset because you don't need money right now, but come 29, when you're looking at assets from more expensive teams, it might come in handy. So don't cock block yourself right now and just save the cash.
And like you said, the 29 doubles is interesting for Brentford because it's not that great with Brighton away, United away, but they are a sort of team who can get a 0-0 at Brighton.
They can, but like if you're talking about Brighton and United, it's first of all away. Like I just don't expect Brighton or United to not score a goal at home.
That's fair enough.
Like I do
like the idea of moving the one out to Shaw that week.
Yeah, like that is the thinking in my head. And that's why, while you're booking for transfers and figuring out your chip strategy, depending on where you're free hitting, again, there is there is a conversation to have where do you want to have a third Brentford player? Because he's not really a pick for 29. Like it's sort of like a horses for courses pick where you're picking a player who has a double, but that double doesn't really have value in 29.
To spin that around, you could argue that the double in Everton and Southampton away 27 isn't great either, but these are the 2 lowest scoring sides in the division. So I think there is upside there of 2 possible clean sheets.
Correct. Because of the skill set, the caliber of the teams, there is a clear difference. Brentford is a top
Absolutely.
half team. So there is a difference, not the case with 29. So you either pivot or you decide whether you want to go with that third player or not.
Correct. But
Do you
then
think there's any merit to picking Shaw, let's say, because United have 27 at home to Southampton, despite the blank in 28, because you're going to want him from 29 onwards over the Brentford defender right now?
Yes, there is.
Shawboto is a god. Since he's taken over set pieces from Ericsson, he's become basically Leighton Baines. His ceiling is so high in any fixture.
Nice to see him
Ridiculous.
reds off.
Mm-hmm. You got the blue on. I got the red on.
Yeah,
That's
I got
how
the
we
blue
know.
on. And there's a reason I got the blue on, because we'll talk about it when we come to the teams in blue. But yeah,
Right.
any interest in Boomo? Because he is legit. Like, I do want to mention that, in these tough games, Frank Thomas does play a 3-5-2 instead of a 3-4-3. And in those games, Boomo does well. Like, he's legit in those games. His underlying stats are also good. The problem is you're pitting him up against a Haaland or a Kane right now, which just looks ridiculous. But, for the market of people who are making their bet against an Erling Haaland right now, I don't mind the idea of buying many extra games by going for Boomo right now with that extra game, because we're not really wanting that extra. We're not really wanting the third Brentford player in 29. Get that attacking player in 27 and then pivot to Iheanacho, Felix, whoever you fancy in 29. Like, that is a strategy with the striker spot. It's something you can do. It's an idea.
It's an idea for sure. Anything more on Brentford? Move on. Right. We'll obviously spend some time on Brighton now, because they're an interesting team. Now, Brighton already have 2 pending doubles that we scheduled. These will likely go in 34 and 37. That's Newcastle away and United at home. And they're likely to have the blank in 32 as well, which will mean City at home will also need to be scheduled at some point down the line. Now, as we mentioned, the Newcastle one is likely going to go outside of 34 and 37. But now what's going to become tricky is it's going to be very difficult to hold 3 Brighton outfielders with all the blanks coming up in 28 and 32. So you probably, I think we could narrow down to 2 picks, 1 in defense, 1 in attack. That's where I think I am on Brighton. What are you guys' general thoughts? I think Estupiñán no-brainer.
Yeah, Purvis is a no-brainer. He's just too attacking. He's got a goal in him. Like, he's running the inside channels a lot. Even if he's touch and go for this week, put him in your team, because it means that he's likely looking good for next week and deal with them. But he's non-negotiable for me. He's absolutely essential on your wildcard draft.
Any fear of rotation, Bucker, for Estupiñán? Because there are a lot of fixtures that will come about in a condensed period. And 29 is going to be right after an international break where he's going to jet back from South America. Do you think there's a case for dunk over Estupiñán there?
I'm not as high on Estupiñán as Pranil is, but I do think he's the defender of choice. And if he's fit, I'll definitely go with him. But he hasn't been rotated so far, so it makes him very difficult to sort of rule him out just because of potential rotation. And he has been doing well, so he'd still probably be the pick, especially because he's actually better for bonus points than Dunk, which is significant. Because even if you rule out the attacking threat, it's because of some of the chances that he creates, he does better, which is important.
Bucker, just the kind of manager that you are, I don't see a world where you don't go for a Purvis kind of pick.
Yeah, Bucker's all about the Purv.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think we are all pretty much on Estupiñán, and the news from what I read on The Athletic is he is expected to be available this weekend. That interesting article where De Zerbi even mentioned that Lamptey did good midweek, but he's not Estupiñán because naturally right-footed. They don't have a replacement for him. The maximum they stick Gross over there. So there's no actual replacement for left back, and he's become a vital cog now of the machine. Yeah. So unless there's a further injury, I don't think he's getting rotated.
Yeah. And I remember, because we share notes when we're watching games and highlights. I think it's happened at least 4 times in the last 6 or 7 game weeks where I've told you, Zoff, when the Brighton doubles come, make sure we have him in our team. Make sure we have him in our team. He's got a goal in him. Like he's one of those guys who's capable of a 25-pointer in either of the doubles. His upside is tremendous. But don't let go of him.
What's interesting though, that the doubles after 29, the fixtures that are going to be added, and listen to this: Newcastle away, United at home, and City at home. These aren't clean sheet banker fixtures. And that's when we were talking about Sanchez earlier, right? I think the appeal of Sanchez for me dies down because you see the games that are going to be tagged on. These aren't really that great fixtures. And also, I think Estupiñán is somebody you can get rid of around 32. because these are the games that are going to be added on, which aren't that great. So you could possibly look at him getting rid of him that then, because the good doubles are in 27 and 29.
That's at least 4.7. He's just very playable.
Correct, but it
Because
depends. In 32, you can possibly pivot to a Trent in that spot.
Yeah, just because it's worth pointing out, because in 34, the non-double game is Wolves at home. And in 37, the non-doubles game is Southampton at home. I'm just very comfortable having this fixture to rely on and then a game against one of the Manchester teams. It's fine. I'm comfortable with that.
It's fair
with the
enough, but so just not worth highlighting. But because for Sanchez, it's not that great, right? It sort of
Correct.
diminishes the
But-
appeal for Sanchez somewhat.
But it also gives the keeper a saves to make who's not going to make saves in matches otherwise. Like,
Speaking of Sanchez, I've seen a few teams on Sanchez and Kepa, but the thing to note there is that they don't have a fixture in
32.
I mean, they're unlikely to have a fixture in 32. So while that gets you an extra game in 27, it also means that you lose out in 32.
Correct. But if
Yeah.
you go with Sanchez or Kepa, the another trade-off over there, you can obviously get Maddison in that slot, and you will be playing Odegaard over the Brighton mid in 27. So I'm not completely against that strategy, but ultimately I think Rea is a better goalkeeper pick than Sanchez.
Yeah. But I do think that when it comes to assessing the players, and just fitting pieces and puzzles, like the keeper pick is more open to luck, where a keeper double-digit haul actually might just happen out of good luck because they managed to keep a clean sheet in a game where they've had to make many saves. It's less predictable over a short frame compared to other spots.
Definitely.
That said, when you come to Brighton, you want the attackers. They're hitting 2+ XG every game. So that's the
Let's talk.
thing you need to debate in.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about the attackers. And before we delve into detail, let me ask you guys quickly before we get into specifics, who are your top 3 mids in order? Pranil, you first.
I'm not going to go first. I don't know, man. Roll the dice. I really don't know. So I've just seen. So when it's so close, because I think it's like 33%, 33%, 33% right now. I simply watched the highlights for the last 4 or 5 games. I suggest you guys too, because the Brighton and Hove Albion YouTube channel has extended 10-minute highlights for all these players. I've just seen the highlights for the Palace game, and 4 big chances fell to McAllister, who's on penalties as well. So in my head earlier, I was looking at Mitoma and March, and I'm like, but how can I not watch this guy who's getting chances and is on pens as well? It's a roll of the dice. I genuinely don't have a strong preference here, because while Mitoma is the player who's slightly wide and who's not getting the XG, I think he's the best attacking footballer of the 3 in terms of able to perform above his XG or convert his XG. He's just a great player to watch.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to split this. I genuinely don't. I don't want to say something for the heck of it. I don't know. Pick with your 2. I don't think you can go wrong either way. Roll the dice and pray to the gods.
And so, before I come to you, Bakar, I know you have some stats on this. I'll just give my ranking. I think March is head and shoulders. I'm reading a stat on Who Scored that he's created more big chances than certain teams, than 8 other teams in February. So I do like March as a pick. I think he would be top for me, and he is expected to be fit for this weekend. The second spot, like you said, with McAllister, it's position dependent. In midweek, he played a deeper role. They had one of the kids playing there. Normally, what he's been doing, he's playing Gross in center midfield and McAllister 10. It could change. De Zerbi is the kind of guy who does like to tinker. So his returns are position dependent. But that being said, we are likely going to get rid of one Brighton mid anyway in 28, right?
Potentially, not necessarily.
So it's not really a long-term thing. By then you can really make a decision. Potentially, I get your point. The Bakar, some stats.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
you have some stats on these guys.
I'm almost hoping that March is ruled out this week, so that picking the 2 Brighton midfielders is easier. But Pranil is right. I mean, Mitoma is the sexy pick, basically. So he is the best player among the 3 to watch. But when you look at the stats, especially since McAllister is playing in a number 10 role, McAllister's had 4 big chances. March has had 2. Mitoma 0. Coming to shots inside the box, McAllister 8, March 4, Mitoma 1. And, McAllister and March, their XGI is actually head and shoulders above Mitoma. So, I mean, it is a no-brainer according to the stats. But again, the problem is that it's a very small sample size. It's 2 to 3 games.
2 games.
But
is
he
not
will
enough.
get the chances if he's playing that 10 role, because he's in the center of the box when every time the player ball is getting cut from either side.
Yes.
So if he's the other thought in my head is, in the 2 or 3 quotes that I've read that come from De Zerbi, he's been pretty adamant that he wants McAllister play
Yes.
further up the field because he's capable of the final pass. That word is what he keeps using all the time, which is he's got the quality for the final pass. So
I agree.
it's worth mentioning
I don't think he will use him in a deeper position. He's going to play in the number 10, especially in the short run. So I won't let that put me off. And let's say even if he does, then I mean he has penalties to fall back on. So with the information we have right now, I think Callister and March are better picks. And like Zoff said, March is creating plenty of big chances, also on set pieces, which helps. So when it comes to overall big chances, Modern's March is actually top. So I think he'd be my first pick if he's fit, and then McAllister and Matoma.
Anything more to add now on Brighton?
interesting that in the game that McAllister played deeper, which is the cup game, Mitoma played the 10, and he was really good. So the 10 position for that Brighton team is good because the center of the box chances is sort of like the advanced Gundo role. I like that.
Should mention though that Estupinan didn't play that game, and Estupinan's role has changed a little bit. He sort of become the inside winger with Mitoma maintaining the width. So there were a lot of factors that worked in Mitoma's favor in that case.
Yeah, but also if Brighton are likely to win a penalty, I think Mitoma is the likeliest to win that penalty for them also. Just another small point. I don't know how you can split this. Go with the 3 cards. We just presented the arguments for all. I don't think there's a wrong pick. Pick 2.
Correct. For sure.
Move on to Pranil's favorite.
Their attacking numbers in general are very good as well. They're, since De Zerbi's taken over, they're actually third for XG. So doubling up, in my opinion, is likely to be highly profitable. Till 29.
Yeah. Just I see all 5 games as control games. Maybe Brentford at home, a tough game, but West Ham, Leeds, Palace, and Bournemouth, I see Brentford posting 2+ XG in all those games, and that's just reliable.
Move on.
Yep.
Right. I know you've been dying to talk about Chelsea, Pranil. You've been just DMing me all week about Chelsea picks, Felix, Sterling, and stuff. So quick word on Chelsea's schedule. Now, Chelsea are likely to blank in game week 32 if United progress. United play Fulham at home. It's a good chance they do. So they will likely have another double in 34 or 37. But it's worth mentioning it won't be a great double because the fixture that's already there in 34 is Arsenal away. And in 37 is City away. So you're getting Manchester United tagged along to either of those fixtures. It's not a great double. So tell me, why are we going for Kepa as our second keeper as such? Bakar, I'm sorry, do you get me?
I mean, the thing is that given how... Yes, I heard you. The thing is that given Chelsea's play style and how they've been playing, they're not exactly conceding high XG shots. So Kepa does tend to make plenty of reasonable, easier saves, and he's getting those pass completion points which help in bonus accumulation as well, because he's making 30+ passes because Chelsea play out from the back. He's having high pass completion percentage as well. So there's that, and he rotates well with Raya, who's the other keeper that we're picking. And as discussed earlier, the thing is that when you compare Kepa with James, Kepa is easier to hide because if game week 32 is a factor and you need more playable players, then Kepa can easily be benched. And that week, Brentford have Villa at home in 32. So there's that. Firstly, the second part is that Kepa also has a double after 30 as well. I mean, there are 2 other options that I considered. The first was Pope. I'm still considering him, to be honest. I mean, he is a good option, but the thing with Pope is that he's pricey, and budget can come into consideration, especially with us needing Maddison, or even someone like a Bruno, and 29 is going to be worth a discussion. So I'm not really sure whether I want to spend that many funds in a goalkeeper. While I don't trust Leicester, so I haven't really considered Ward at all. I guess you can pick someone like a De Gea as well, but again, that's not really optimal when Shaw and Bruno are likely to come into play. I mean, the good thing about De Gea is that yes, United are likely to have a double in 34 and 37, but again, as I said, that rules you out of Shaw and Bruno. So it's tough, but I mean, I'm on Kepa and Raya as of now.
Same here.
I don't know what my second keeper is. I just haven't got down to looking at that part of my...
Any thoughts, Pranil?
I don't know what my second keeper pick is because I haven't looked at my keeper. I haven't come down to that point. I'm just... Like the larger conversation I want to have is about Chelsea as a whole. And I was feeling terrible that Spurs didn't, qualify for the next round of the FA Cup, because then it just makes. I'm happy to make the Felix bet over somebody like a Watkins. I was looking forward to make that bet because of Leeds home, Leicester away, Everton home, Aston Villa home, and Liverpool at home. But I don't think I can make that bet in the next 3 fixtures against a Harry Kane who's got Forest at home and Southampton away. Like let's get that out of the way first. But objectively speaking, right? I mean, so if we played this game long enough to know that fixtures breed good form. Now I know that the camp is downbeat, etc. as well, and there's been a lot of factors that have sort of been married at Chelsea, where they have a lot of players. Potter is not finding the right combination. But what could happen going forward is Chelsea are 1-0 down in the Champions League, and they could be out of the Champions League, which means they only have one competition to focus on for the rest of the season. And that is the Premier League, where they have this strong run of really good fixtures, where their home games read Leeds, Everton, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Brighton, Brentford, Forest. And outside of that, they have away fixtures against Wolves and Bournemouth. They have really good fixtures. So I do think that because of the caliber of the players that exist in that team, them to find the right winning combination and stick with it isn't really far away. So I'm happy to make that bet. I just think I need to postpone that bet in game week 29 now, given that it's just stupidly difficult to bet against a Harry Kane. That's where I am. So I do think Chelsea, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Chelsea having good results and having goals in the next few games, because I feel the marriage of all the players being fit, the wingbacks being fit. What I've seen in that 35 minutes against Southampton, where Kai, Sterling, and Felix played together, was just very, very encouraging. With Enzo Fernandez in midfield, is a great midfielder. Thiago Silva is injured, but I do think that Bardasheli, Fofana, and Koulibaly is decent enough. There will be picks that emerge, and the picks that emerge that are of interest to me are in attack. But I just think betting on them might have to wait until 28, 29, where we know who the right pick is, because the fact is that we don't know who the pick is. You might think it's Felix, but he does a lot of hard work, and it might be that all the chances fall to somebody like a Raheem Sterling. So we don't know who that is. But I do think that this is, if somebody was again chasing and wanted to make a bet, this is where I'd go, because there are so many good players. And if I was betting, it'd be Felix or Sterling in attack, and James is a conversation to have in defense.
Yep, I wouldn't go anywhere near. We had good fixtures, we've been shit.
Yeah. And this is just a very generic point, which Ryan has mentioned in the chat, where he said, I love how a United fan is more optimistic on Chelsea than the actual Chelsea fan. And our good friend Danny, makes a very good point when he's quoted it multiple times on Twitter, where he said, beware of fans. And I do think that, when a team is going through extreme fortunes, which is what is happening with your team at the moment, so you're just more invested emotionally in that team. And I think there is a certain sense of capability at looking and assessing the situation from a neutral perspective without emotionally being involved is lost. That happens to me with United also. So I do think that is the case. That's where I'm with Chelsea. But if somebody wants to make a bet, I'm not against it. But it's just difficult to bet against Kane.
Fair enough. Now, we've spoken about James, and then we should also mention that Thiago Silva is likely going to be missing beyond 29, is 6 weeks out, and that's also a vital factor. Something to keep in mind. We haven't mentioned. Anything else on Chelsea?
If somebody wanted to punt, is there any reason to bet on a Chilwell above James? Because a lot of people were interested in Chilwell. I was seeing in the chats.
The thing is, the fullbacks, I don't think either of them are particularly attacking, but I guess there's no reason particularly to favor Chilwell over James. I think James is taking a few set pieces from what I've seen, but neither of them are getting the shots in the box that they were under Tuchel. Bakar, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in the early thoughts video that Brunel did a few days ago, he did point out that Chelsea's defensive numbers over the past 6 fixtures, I think they actually considered it was actually the best in the league. So yes, attacking wise, you guys are struggling, but defensively, the numbers have been pretty good. Yes, obviously the loss of Silva will impact them, but I mean, with the fixtures that they have coming up, I won't be too surprised to see a few clean sheets.
Should mention Kante is back. I should put that in front. So that Thiago Silva's loss is possibly countered by the return of Kante. That's something that skipped my mind.
Yeah. Right. And there are two ways to look at this game that we're playing. You can either play this game or you can work this game. And if somebody wants to play this game betting on a Chelsea, I'm not against it. That's all.
Yes, I think you mentioned
You
that
don't
before.
always have to. Yeah.
Let's move on to Palace. Not much to talk about there. They do have the double,
Fucking
but
Spurs, man. I hate that they fucking lost, man.
there
Anyway.
goes the algorithm. Cool. No,
Yeah.
Palace is again. Let's skip Palace, even though they have the double. It's not great. Not much to talk about there. Again, let's skip Everton as well. Fulham. Let's just touch upon them. There's not much to discuss. They blank in 28, likely blank maybe in 32. But they only if they beat Manchester United, they will likely have the double, but the double will be Liverpool away. So Fulham might be dead to us now for the remainder of the season. Mitrovic won't darken my door again.
Yeah. At least not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Doesn't
Maybe
look
later.
like it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Leicester. There's a lot to unpack over here. They have a good double in 29.
Leeds United. You forget Leeds United.
Again, do you want to talk about this much to touch upon that? I thought we were going to skip Leeds as well.
Just that they're one of the few teams that don't blank in 28 and have a double in 29. But I think there are better teams to target at the moment. I just want to mention that Garcia seemed a little more defensive compared to the front foot football we've seen from forgot the manager's name, Jesse Marsh. Yeah. But it surprised me that they were able to get under 0.5 XG in 3 of the games against weaker opposition. And Garcia's, I think, having them play in a more controlled sort of Louis Van Gaal fashion, not front foot attack, but I don't think any picks stand out. That's all.
Yep. I think they're much more likely as a team you can target to get clean sheets against now. Leeds, I think.
Yeah. Also, somebody might look at Nonto as a bench boost option, but it's worth mentioning that he's playing a lot wider than he did under Marsh. Under Marsh, he was an inside forward. Garcia, in that one game that he played him very wide as a winger. So I just wanted to add that.
Right. Move on to Leicester.
Yes.
Okay. So Leicester have a good double in 29. They have a good fixture this week away to Southampton. Maddison is expected to be back. They have no blanks or doubles after 29. But what's interesting is the fixtures from 30 to 38 are quite good. Only in 31 they play City away and 37 is Newcastle away. So the fixture run as such is quite good despite the lack of doubles after 29. You have Bournemouth, Wolves, Leeds right after the double. Definitely a team worth looking at. Pranal, you've been quite big on Leicester.
Yeah. But again, are they more reliable than Arsenal attack right now? I don't know. Like, honestly speaking, for that fifth midfielder spot, you're making the bet on Maddison, who has an extra game in 29. But you're making that bet against an Arsenal midfielder who has Bournemouth and Palace at home. And that's a difficult bet to make.
Right.
Just Arsenal are more reliable, and that's the fact.
Right. I'm looking at bringing Maddison in 28 possibly for one of the Brighton mids. I think that is something possibly a bit of a template move. Even though the fixture away to Brentford isn't great, Maddison's just a monster. A quick word in defense now. None of us like Ward for the backup keeper. Go ahead.
Before we move to defense, it's worth mentioning that if somebody is willing to bet on an attack, and even Harvey Barnes is a pick. I was looking at his XG numbers. He's got so many games against middling to poor opposition where he's posting more than 0.5 XG per game. You can just go to the FPL website and look at the game-wise XG breakdown. His numbers are really good. So if you're looking to punt on Leicester, all these 3 are fine. And I think my instinct is that Brendan Rodgers is going to stick with that front four that's worked, provided they're fit. And that means Leicester are capable of a lot many goals. And just very big picture speaking, the fact that we might not have 2 of their attackers or more for that 29-30 period is one of the weaknesses I see on our current wildcard.
Agreed.
It's interesting because I just don't trust Rodgers, or he might start like the other game also against Arsenal. Iheanacho's been the best player. He chucked Vardy on. Vardy was getting no space, no good whatsoever. Rodgers is the opposite of a football genius. So I really don't know what he's going to do with Nacho at any time. I don't want to make that bet now till 29 at least.
Yeah, and I understand where you're worried about making that bet right now. But Maddison and Barnes are fine for minutes.
Yes,
that's the one.
I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, that's all. And almost the thing is, I just want to mention this from a footballing perspective, is the presence of Iheanacho makes Barnes a better pick because he's a runner in the inside channel. He's sort of like an inside forward. His role is similar to that of Rashford, where he makes these inside forward runs and he's through on goal. He had the best chances against United as well. And that's because Nacho is so good at holding the ball and playing the right pass. Like Nacho, if you pick him, his goal potential and his assist potential are equal. Like he's that good a player and that good a pick. And Rodgers, for some stupid reason, subs him off at the 65th minute, even if he's chasing the game. But that's a separate matter. But it increases Barnes' caliber as an FPL pick, in my opinion.
I'm not really just quickly before we move on, just to touch upon Ward. Is a fixture, I think, what's it, Palace away, Villa for bench boost in 29 to save a little bit of money on Kepa. And either of you guys considered that?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't think it's a bad shout. It's just using Ward, and then you make sure that your second keeper is somebody who has doubles in 29, 34, 37, something like that.
No, with Rhea. I'm saying something like Rhea Ward.
No, I don't know. I haven't looked at keepers. I don't want to comment.
I just think Kepa is more of a, let's say, he's more reliable than someone like a Ward. I mean, I just don't like what I've seen from Leicester defensively post the World Cup, and even in that spell where they were doing well defensively, where they had 6 clean sheets and 7 fixtures, the defensive stats weren't exactly great. They were overperforming even in that spell. So yeah, I'm very fidgety when it comes to the Leicester defense.
The only reason I was considering it is no decision to make. You sort of just play Rhea every week. I hate making goalkeeper decisions with Rhea. Kepa, you are sort of going to have a decision to make pretty much every week which one to play. Sorry, Pranal, you were saying.
Yeah.
I was talking to Samuel Martin, also, who's a pretty reliable Leicester fan as well. And he just said, don't look at our defense, simply put. I mean, and the only thing of note in my head was Johnny Evans might be fit soon, and that might improve the defense, but that's where we are with Leicester defense. Because I was a little interested in Christensen, because he's quite an attacking wingback for Leicester. And sort of if you're trying to fit in pieces and puzzles, and the games in 29 are Palace away, Villa home. Even then, just not a reliable defense.
Move on to Liverpool.
Just before we move on to Liverpool, I think we haven't done any plugs so far, and it's been a pretty long pod, and it's still going to be a long pod. We think it's one of the most important pods of the season, so we're not going to hold down on time. But there are about 1,200 people watching us. It would be really nice if you could just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We've done a video on Tuesday as well. We've done a video on Wednesday as well. We're trying to really up the volume and quality of content that we're doing, and your support would be nice and appreciated. That's all. If you want to support us outside of liking and subscribing, you can join our Discord, where honestly I've learned more from the Discorders in our group than I think they've learned from us. There's such good people on our Discord right now. Lots of great people. It's a great community. Looking for more footballing, general life conversation in your life, you can become a member on Patreon or YouTube, and you can join the conversation on Discord.
Right. Liverpool. Now, Liverpool have a confirmed blank in 20, as we all know. But what's interesting is in blank game week 32, which might be an exit route we look for a lot of players, they play Forest at home. And right after that, they segue out to have West Ham away, and they might have a double in 34. So around 32, I think Liverpool will become possibly more relevant to us. And the double on 34, 37 will likely include a home game as well, because it'll either be Tottenham or Fulham, or Villa plus Fulham, whichever way it falls. So, but the double in 29 isn't great. It's City away, Chelsea away. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think if you're wildcarding in 29, 30, 31, whichever week that might be, or 33 also, the big difference between people wildcarding there and us wildcarding now is 0 Liverpool versus 2 to 3 Liverpool. Because even us, after 29, we are looking potentially going to pivot to Liverpool, given that they have a great fixture in 32 and a potential double, which is a decent looking double in 34, 37. In general also, their fixtures towards the end of the season are good.
Absolutely. And they likely won't be involved in any competitions as well, barring a miracle against Madrid. So they're one to watch out for, but not really any picks to discuss as such, right?
Yep. What if somebody hasn't pressed the wildcard button and owns Salah and Darwin? Do you hold them for Bournemouth away in 27? What do you do there?
You do, and it's a home game against United also is not a bad fixture as such for attackers. I do expect Liverpool to concede, but at home against United, they should be up for it. I don't think there's a bad fixture to hold even at United at home. Right. City. City will be blanking in 28. They likely blank in 32. They will double in 34 and 37. They will not have any double in 29, but they have Liverpool at home, which I think is a very good fixture, is potential hat-trick for Haaland over there. Either of you guys entertaining any thoughts of getting rid of Haaland either now or in 28 or 29, for example?
Maybe later we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but not at the moment.
Not at the moment, right?
Same here.
Pretty much, because he's going to be a captain in 26 for most of us. We'll have a captaincy discussion, but I think as of now, I'm on Haaland.
Yeah, regardless of whoever we captain in 26, the fact is that he will be captained by millions in the game, and he will probably be the most captained player in this game week. So while we're sort of setting ourselves up to wildcard to make gains out of 26 to this period till 29, I just don't see any reason to bet against someone who's as prolific as Haaland, because you sort of tend to pick and choose your battles, and this is just something which is overkill in my opinion.
It's important to be devil's advocate here, Bakar, though, is in the next 4 game weeks, where a lot of the players that people are buying have 2 or 3 games more compared to Erling Haaland, you're likely going to
captain. Selling him.
Let me finish because it's important to be devil's advocate. And if somebody does want to go in that direction, I don't want to talk them off it, because there is strategic value to going down that route. You're only going to captain Haaland in 26, which isn't a easy fixture on paper, which is Newcastle at home. And when you have an Arsenal playing Bournemouth at home, and when you have Rashford playing a leaky Liverpool team, there is merit if somebody wants to bet against Haaland. Like, I wouldn't put anybody off it. There is strategic value to do it, especially because he's not going to be a very popular captaincy pick in 27, 28 or 29.
Correct. But
it's a good bet to make if you want.
30-31 is going to be Southampton and Leicester, where he might again be captain pick. And then you probably won't bring him back because 32 is the blank. It's a very, very aggressive move. But it does free up money for upgrades elsewhere as well. So I'm not totally against it, but it wouldn't match with my play style personally.
Yeah, I know, but I think
that makes more sense in 28.
Yeah.
Correct.
Fair enough. But the fine balance, if you want to make that move right now, is if you win, if you come out winning the bet against Haaland by the time 29 ends, count your stars lucky and get him back for Southampton away in 30. Don't push your luck beyond that, is what I'd say.
Even with a blank in 32.
Even with a blank in 32. Because that's when everybody's going to captain him. Correct. Like, it's not the bet against 100% EO or 80% EO Haaland. It's the bet against 180% EO amongst engaged managers Haaland. So if you're doing it, do it, because captaincy isn't really a conversation until 29, but make sure you're getting him back in 30.
Right. Now let's talk about Manchester United, who are a very interesting team now. Go ahead.
Wait. Yeah. Just City is general conversation to have again when we zoom out a little, is the big difference between us who are wildcarding early, because I think outside of Haaland, we're not going to have anybody, to people who are potentially going to be wildcarding in the 32-33 window, where they will have 3 City because they have doubles to be scheduled later compared to us. So our pivot from 29 onwards might be towards 3 teams. United, more Liverpool, more City.
I certainly won't be going near the defense again this season, but I guess in the midfield, you might have your Fodens, etc., who do pop up around that time.
Yeah.
Like United, they have a double in 29, likely blank in 32. But what's interesting is the fixtures in 30 and 31 are Everton at home and Forest away. So there are points potentially there. But then again, 33 is Spurs away. Then you have the doubles in 34 and 37, which both look like good doubles. Because it's either going to be Villa in 34 plus Brighton or Bournemouth in 37 plus Brighton. Good games to target in the doubles. Now the question is, do we look to hold Shaw, or do we look to even buy Shaw in 29? What are you guys on that, Bakar?
As of now, I'm looking to buy him in 29. But I'm not totally opposed to the idea of having him in the 26th draft.
Fair enough.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, we'll discuss that later on, because I think it all depends on 28, how many players you're willing to go. Quantity versus quality might come up as an argument in 28.
And you can almost get by not having him if you want to make a gamble, because it's Newcastle away and Brentford home. But again, Shaw's capable of cleaning both these games and providing an assist and a goal as well. So the upside is there with a pick like Shaw.
Yeah, I'll definitely be buying Bruno. Bruno. He's in the right wing role. He's been looked fantastic. He's going to be playing 90 minutes on penalties. I do like these fixtures more for attackers, but like you said, Shaw is an attacker, so that's going to be a difficult decision, especially if the IB throws up some injuries.
Yeah. And also wait for, I think Ten Hag's presser is today, but he did mention that Shaw had a small injury. So wait for what news emerges out of that also, because it could just make the decision for you on Wildcard.
So easier. I don't think it's a major one. The max, from what I have read, is like a 1 week, 2 weeks sort of thing.
Yeah. Just being responsible, mentioning that he is injured at the moment. That's all.
Anything more on United?
No, I mean, you ideally want 3 of them. Don't sell Rashford. Liverpool and Southampton are great games for attackers. That's all.
Cool. Now, Newcastle, again, a very interesting team. Now, they have no blanks going forward. 27 and 28 are good. Wolves and NFO. They will likely have the double we mentioned outside 34 and 37, but they will only have one double in either 34 or 37, not both. But this is likely to be a good double because the fixture that are originally there in 34 is Southampton at home and 37 is Leicester at home. So I do think it's worth carrying two Newcastle, at least in your draft currently right now. I think Trippier is obviously nailed. The question now for the second spot comes down to Shar versus Pope versus Botman. I don't like going triple because I want to keep that third slot open for an attacker, a Wilson or an Almiron. So very conscious of not locking myself out of that. Some quick thoughts on Share. I spoke to Neil from Fantasy Football Scout, who's a Newcastle fan. He said Share is more due than a 10-month-old pregnant lady. His numbers are absolutely insane in terms of the season. Now he's top amongst all defenders for shots, 35, shots in the box, 25, big chances, 6, and shots on target, 9. His 3.03 XG is only behind Gabriel, 3.25, and Gabriel has played around 3-4 more games. So I do like the upside of Share over there. Bakar, you've been mulling about this. Where are you on it?
Yes, I mean his numbers are incredible, and Newcastle are generally a team which, because of Trippier's quality of delivery, they've been top from XG from set plays, even pre-restart and post-restart as well. And like you said, Shea's numbers are incredible. In fact, only Trippier has a better XGI per 90 since the restart, so he's definitely due. And the big question is whether you pick him or someone like a Botman. Shearer's had 6 big chances this season. Botman's had 1, but Botman generally tends to do better for bonus accumulation. And Botman, the problem with Shearer is that he's a bit of a yellow card magnet. So he's had 4 or 5 yellow cards this season. Botman has just the 1. So these are the things that you need to factor in, and whether or not you would need that 0.6, 0.7 going forward. I mean, if funds weren't an issue, then it's an easy choice to go with Share because obviously he seems like an explosion that is waiting to happen. But if I was picking one right now, I prefer Share. But I'll have a look at my draft and play around with it to see if I need funds in the future. If not, then Share is an easy selection.
Any thoughts, Pranil?
No, I think you guys have covered everything there is to say.
Cool. Move on to Forest. I think Forest is more or less a skip. Maybe they may be interesting for game week 29 free hitters because I like their double in 29, but as such, outside that, not really investable.
It's good fixtures if you look at it, but I just think there are better picks around.
I don't mind number 20. The double in 29, I think, is one of the better ones fixture-wise, Wolves and Leeds. So definitely something you can look at if you free hit, but not really otherwise. Southampton
just talking outside, if there was a world in which there was an Erling Haaland injury, I won't even be surprised if the 3 of us pivot to a 29 free hit. If Chelsea show form, if Leicester show form, because West Ham have a good double, which is Southampton at home and Newcastle at home, that is an option which we have to maybe be flexible with based on how things and form look.
Yeah, I'm quite flexible with my free hit strategy up to 28 because a lot of clarity comes over the international break.
That's what I was going to come to. As of now, if I sort of ask you which week are you likely to free hit in 32, 34, 37, or even 29, I don't think will be that popular for 26 wildcarders. But as of now, roughly which week do you think will be the week where you will end up free hitting?
I think I'll be spontaneous, Bakar. I'll sleep with whichever bed looks most comfortable at the time.
I like 37. 37 free hit because that time of the season is always a little bit unpredictable in terms of lineups, rotation and stuff like that. We saw that last season a little bit. Guys who didn't have the free hit left, I made about 30-40 points in that free hit at that time. So that I do like keeping it for then. It gives you a last roll of the dice, sort of a bit of an aggressive moves you can make, pick players you wouldn't otherwise.
Zoff, I have some notes in this, so would like to sort of speak and delve into this in slightly more detail. So 37 makes sense if, let's say, Liverpool get that double that you can see on the screen with the home fixture against Fulham. That falls over there and they have a fixture at home to Villa, then that might potentially make more sense. But in general, I think 32 or 34 will generally be more popular. 34 because, City are expected to have that home game against Fulham, and and one of West Ham or Brighton. And in general, we're not really sure which City assets to pick because of the rotation and all, and who knows where they end up in the Champions League by that point as well. So judging by the quality of the fixtures, I do see some upside to free hitting in 34 as well. And Brighton play Wolves and have a fixture against either City or United. So given the fact that we are likely to have we'll be on triple double or triple Brighton, so that's a factor that needs to be taken into consideration. But I think 32 will actually still be the most popular, because when you look at the fixtures post 29, we're going to have Brighton assets, we're going to have players from United, because United have a good run of fixtures in 30 and 31. When you look at their fixtures, they have Everton and Forest, right? So 32 will still be tricky to navigate, with Brighton blanking, United blanking, Chelsea blanking. I still think we'll end up free hitting in game week 32. Obviously, this is just a very rough thinking in my head, but that's what I think it will come to.
Yeah.
When you zoom out, I think if you're making up your mind on a 32 free hit right now, you're rolling the risky dice of going lighter on Arsenal. But outside of that, I think if you're making no commitments to where you're going to free hit, we're likely going to get the news for the doubles before the 29, before game week 29, hopefully, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think what transfers we make in 29 will be keeping in mind when we're free hitting, whether that's 32, 34 or 37. And we will pivot accordingly, I reckon.
Correct. Keep an open mind, but I generally want to avoid a 32 free hit because I think it is manageable, because there are only 4 teams effectively going to blank. I like the upside
Popular
more in
teams,
the
though.
bigger double. The relevant teams, that's the tricky part. The relevant teams who are going to blank, they're not irrelevant teams. But I like it for the one of the whichever is going to be the bigger double, 34 or 37. It all depends how you're set up, right? Because let's say if Liverpool go in 34, you can easily segue from the United guys to the Liverpool guys, even for hits in 32. And then 37, you can attack without those Liverpool guys, for example. So a lot of things depend on how the fixtures fall.
Yeah, but Zoff, for people who are wildcarding now, would you let any of this influence your team selection in game week 26?
No, I'm right now.
But I think it'll influence.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
The influences my most in 29 more so than anything.
Okay.
Pranil?
Yeah. Even 28. Like, let's say you're somebody who's relying on 3 Arsenal against Southampton and 3 Brentford against Aston Villa at home. Like, these are the players we're potentially going to hold. You're going to hold your Newcastle defenders who play Spurs at home anyway. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't mind a double Newcastle defense against Spurs at home. That will decide your transfers in 28 and even 29, because even a Brentford decision will need to be made then. Like, if you're looking of saving the free hit in 32s off, then you're less likely to move from Brentford defender to United defender. Like, that decision will arrive, that keeping in mind when you're going to free hit.
Absolutely. So keep an open mind, but I don't think it influences our strategy in the short term. It doesn't influence our selection now as such.
Yeah.
Cool. Southampton, can just keep it brief. We can more or less skip. Even they have a double in 27, but I don't know. No, there's no faith there with even only possibly Ward-Prowse, but I don't think there's much time we should spend on Southampton. We've already gone close to 90 minutes.
It's okay. It's only one bet to make in Southampton if you want to. It's the 27 bet on Ward-Prowse. Like 180 minutes of free kicks and penalties, if at all. That's all. Nothing else.
Nothing much there. Right. Move on to Tottenham.
Yep.
So Spurs now became interesting now because now they have no blanks and no doubles, but they have good fixtures. For 26 to 28, the fixtures read Wolves, Forest, and Southampton away. Kane is arguably the best captain pick now for game week 28, so I don't think we can ignore him. But we will likely need to sell Kane in 29, I think, to raise funds elsewhere, right? But the fixtures are good even after 29. They have Brighton and Bournemouth right after 29.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that Kane as a short-term and long-term pick?
I think you see how he's looked and how Spurs in general have looked by the time 28 emerges, and whether options from West Ham, Chelsea, and Leicester at that point look enticing enough, and make the call then. But right now you go with Harry Kane. Even yes, he's a strong captaincy option in 28, but Arsenal do have Crystal Palace at home in 28. It's the fixture in 27 that scares me, because Forest are one of the worst away teams in the league. And it just looks like a Harry Kane hat-trick week, Like, not the week I want to bet against him.
Correct. Anything to add, Bakar?
Yeah.
I mean, let's say if Newcastle went doubling in 29, I mean, I do like a Spurs defender, but I do think there are better options. For example, Newcastle defense, we've already spoken about. But let's say if that wasn't a factor, or them doubling later wasn't a factor, then I would have looked at someone like an Emerson Royal in more detail, given how well the fixtures are.
Also worth mentioning, I actually wanted to ask you boys, if you wanted to play aggressive with the wildcard draft, who would you let go of, Kane or Haaland right now? If you could let go of only one.
Kane.
Not
Because
Haaland,
of
still.
Not
because of the
Haaland.
captaincy.
Right.
Yeah, because of the
Oh my
captaincy.
God.
Like we
factor in
covered last
26.
spot, right? Kane shits points, but it's not diarrhea. You get Haaland is
Yeah.
explosive diarrhea at any game.
But Haaland isn't playing in 28.
Correct. So
Like,
that
you're-
is something
like,
to think
you're
about.
gonna
That's what
make-
Baker's been telling us the whole time. You keep Kane and get rid of Haaland.
I'm just saying, if you are somebody who's gambling in game week 26, going with Tony plus one expensive striker plus a cheap striker you fancy, that expensive striker in your team, will it be Haaland or Kane? In my team, if I was making the gamble, I'd keep Kane, lose Haaland. If I'm making the gamble, I
Yeah.
think now.
That's your style, though. But
Because
Because
I
I think when you look at the fixtures, game week 27, Forest, yes, but in that week, other teams have doubled. So I assume a Brighton or a Brentford player will be more highly captained. Similarly, in game week 28, I think an Arsenal player will be more captain than Kane. So I would rather sell Haaland because of the captaincy factor this week. If Haaland explodes and gets a brace,
you would rather keep
then
Haaland, you
it's-
mean?
Yes, I would rather keep
Yeah.
Haaland.
Yeah.
I would
Fair.
feel physically ill not owning Haaland. And I think for me, it's just not worth the mental anxiety, irrespective of points. That's just how I play.
Fair enough. And it's important. You're making me think about worst case scenario against a 150% EO Haaland this week, and it isn't a pretty picture. So I get that.
The main risk is this week.
Main risk is this week.
Yeah.
Quickly just cover West Ham. Now they're blank in 28. They will likely double in 34 or 37. That double will likely include City away. I had included Areola in my earlier draft, but that was primarily keeping the 29 bench boost in mind and to get another double later on. But the defense, Roy Keane shat on them yesterday for how they turned up at United. He wasn't very happy, but I do like the look of Danny Ings. I think Ings might be the one I pivot to out of Kane over Iheanacho. Southampton, Newcastle at home in 29, Fulham away in 30, and then 32 you have Bournemouth. I think Ings is one we need to look at post 28.
Yeah. A team to scout in the next 2 weeks, because if their form sustains, you might want to bet on them in 29, essentially.
Pretty much. That's it.
Areola, a lot of people have been looking at Areola as a keeper option.
I don't mind it, but again, the thing is, what's the appeal over there in terms of rotation? I don't know how long the timeline is. They mentioned Fabianski is out for a period. I think it might be, I don't know if it's out for the entire season. So something more, I guess you need to monitor in terms of timeline. But I don't mind the Areola pick. You'd probably go him over Kepa, I guess. But then you'd be playing Rea, I guess, for the next couple of weeks, as long as you're okay with that.
Which is okay.
Which is fine, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Wolves, we can skip. No blanks, no doubles, but not really an investable team.
Yep.
Right. Let's cover now captaincy before we discuss the one of the template drafts that I've made. We'll have some images from Fantasypedia up over here. The first matchup obviously is for Haaland. Newcastle conceding a lot of chances down the center. So there's not really need to really explain about Haaland thing over here, right? I think it's more let's discuss the other guys more in detail. We don't really need to talk much about Haaland per se. Or do you guys have anything to add over here?
No, not much to add.
Yeah.
Nothing.
We all know what Haaland does at home. Liverpool versus Manchester United is obviously an interesting one. Now, Rashford is going to be playing on Trent's side. And Liverpool have obviously been weaker down that side. I think it's a legit shout. If you want to go outside Haaland there. But there's no reason not to captain Haaland per se. But Rashford is definitely an option you can consider.
See, I'll tell you where I am with the captaincy. Like, if the only reason you might think of going against Haaland for captaincy is if Bruno Guimaraes is fit, because I think that increases the capacity and capability of that Newcastle team a lot more in general. But he is a fitness doubt, if I'm not mistaken.
He is a doubt as of now.
Yeah. If he's a doubt, and if tomorrow Eddie Howe rules him out as an option, blindly captain Haaland is where I'm at. But outside of that, more than Rashford, I'm leaning towards Arsenal attackers and
And the image here
Saka mainly.
is quite interesting now. Bournemouth have conceded a lot of chances down their left. So the matchup is definitely ripe for Saka return over here. And Saka is just red hot right now. I can't
Yeah.
really put anyone off that. Saka is red hot. Arsenal are red hot. This is a 4-5
And
goal
Zoff,
game.
there's also that I mentioned that Bournemouth are top for attempts from set plays conceded. So Saka on set plays can get an assist as well.
Yeah.
Good potential there.
It's a 3-4-5-0 sort of game. Like you expect Arsenal to keep full control of that game. Maybe if at all they concede one on the counter, but there are many goals for Arsenal in this game.
Correct. The positional matchup also definitely favors over here.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. Now, if you want to look at Tony, who's up against a Paulinia-less Fulham, Fulham also concede a lot of chances down central areas. So this matchup also is very appealing for Tony.
Correct.
Something you can look at. Should we move on to our draft?
Yes.
So Zoff is on Haaland. Haaland is not scored, right?
I'm on Haaland. I'm on Haaland.
Yep. I'm on Haaland irrespective of what happens with Bruno. No need to mess around with that. Right. So I'll just walk you guys through a draft that I feel is pretty much going to be very close to the template over here. It's got Kepa in goal with Rea as a backup, Gabriel, Estupinan, me, Botman, and Trippier. You could go Pinnock and share over Trippier, me and Botman instead. It's about the same amount of money. In midfield is Rashford, Saka, Odegaard, March, and McAllister. Up top is Tony, Haaland, and Kane. And this has about 3 million in the bank. So it's very affordable for you guys, even with lower team value. Now, how this team will look in 20... Go ahead, Pranil, you're saying something?
Yeah, just potential positions to differentiate. We've already spoken about the pod, but worth reiterating where combinations of defenders and keepers is up for debate. I think Rashford, Saka, and 2 Brighton midfielders is going to be chalk. It's that 5th midfielder spot. And Tony and maybe Kane are going to be chalk. It's about whether you want to make the bet against Haaland or Kane, one of the premium strikers for one of the other options.
And which is the second Arsenal mid as well.
Yeah.
I do like having the 2 Newcastle guys in place though. It makes things quite easier going forward for the double and 32, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So on 27, this is going to give you 6 doublers, the 3 Brentford guys, the 3 Brighton guys. You would be benching Odegaard, 1 Newcastle defender, and the Arsenal defender, which doesn't look that great per se. And somebody even pitched the idea to me of a bench boost this week. If you go with somebody like a Sanchez. It's not the worst idea, but then obviously 29, you'd be benching even better fixtures, I would say, because I think Leeds at home is a better fixture even than Fulham away. Fulham haven't been as leaky. They've changed their tactics a little bit, but with Paulinia out, so obviously
it's like United missing Casemiro. It's that big a difference. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
it is. So I don't obviously like doing it. Maybe an injury or by that time changes a hand, but this is how it's looking so far for 27.
Zoff, I won't be surprised if we go for the second Arsenal midfielder instead of Maddison, and let's say Brentford pummel Fulham 4-0 or final, because Paulinho makes that much of a difference. We could easily not feel comfortable benching the players we do and pivot to a 27 bench boost also. It could happen where you're just feeling it and you go for it. It's open. I don't hate the idea.
It's open. Only thing possibly Kepa away to Leicester, it doesn't feel points wise very great to me. And I think Fulham might score at home. So again, the Arsenal clean sheet doesn't feel that it could be an open game there.
Yeah, Mitrovic is fit now. So yeah, that is a factor. You're right.
That's something to keep in mind. Now, this is how you'd end up looking in game week 28 now. This is with all the blanks. Go ahead.
Pause. Sorry. Yeah, just before we move on, it's important to present a counter argument there, wherein 26 and 27 are 1 week away. The potential downside of 2 international injuries completely screwing you up in 29 is there. There is that factor worth citing. That's all.
Right.
Like, it's important to paint that picture also, because it's an international break before looking to BB in 29.
Correct. Now, this is
and weird things happen in 29. Weird people start, etc. as well. So there is that slight nervousness with the 29 bench post.
There is, for sure. Now, this is the team in 28. You're likely going to have at least 4 blankers. Let's say you move one of the Brighton mids over to Maddison. Even with that, you'll have Haaland, March, Estupinan, and Rashford likely who will be on your bench. So unless you sell Haaland, I just don't see how you really field 11 this week. Is going to be a little bit tricky, or maybe you sell the other Brighton mid, which you don't really want to do, or the Brighton defender, right?
Yeah, or you sell Haaland this week for an attacker you like, or you sell Ivan Toney. That's those are the moves. Yeah.
No, Tony still has a fixture. My point is how to field 11
Tony
is
has
how.
Leicester
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So my point is to field 11 this week. You have to make your bet by selling Haaland. I think if you sell Haaland, you don't buy it back in 30. You make the bet that you stay with him without till 32, which is risky, of course. It's not something I'm going to do.
You can still bet 1 game Haaland against 3 games for player X.
You can.
Which
Absolutely.
whatever perception we are going to say right now, because right now we are not facing the situation in front of us. We will face that situation in front of us in 28 when a striker has scored 2 goals in the last 2 games and we're like, okay, let's go for it. He has 3 games right now, etc.
Yes, but at this point, I'd also like to mention that it really isn't a big deal if you even field 10 in game week 28
exactly.
because it's a very relative. Even if you look at the fixtures, it's a low scoring game week anyway. So even if you have 10, it's not a problem. You should sort of look at this as from a long-term perspective rather than just look at an extra starter just for the sake of having one.
I mean, who would you sell him for? Would you sell him for Watkins?
Felix, maybe. Felix and Nacho. One of those.
Yeah. Everton at home's off.
Bro, let's not talk about Chelsea more. You've mentioned Chelsea investable at least 6-7 times. We've got the point.
Yeah.
Right. So now this is now assuming you sell one Brighton mid. Now this is how you'll end up in 29. Now I've made 3 transfers here in this draft over here. I brought Shaw in, I've brought Bruno in, and I've brought Iheanacho in for let's say a -4. You plan out this way, you'd end up bench boosting with something like Kepa, Saka, Haaland, and Botman, which is decent. Saka and Haaland both have good fixtures. Botman or Share, whoever that is in that fixture, has that. So if there are no injuries, you could get away with this. Or if you do have any injuries with the international break, maybe skip the Shaw move, and I'll talk to you guys why. I don't think that skipping the Shaw move is that bad idea, although I'm still very tempted. This is how this team would end up looking in 32. Assuming you don't do too many transfers over here. 32 still gets a bit messy because you will likely be benching Rashford, you will likely be benching Haaland, you will likely be benching one Brighton mid. So you will end up with 2 United players without a fixture and also Estupinan without a fixture. So effectively 3 blankers, assuming you don't move the United guys out. So that's where it becomes a bit tricky with the United guys, right? You're effectively going to have the 0-pointer over there, bring him for a hit also in 29, where Gabriel has a good clean sheet fixture in 29 and a good clean sheet fixture in 32. So something to think about there in that Shaw position, I think.
I want you to circle back to the 29 draft though.
Sure. Tell me.
Yeah. And that this is essentially the problem with this bench boost is because the 2 Brentford guys that you have aren't really optimal.
Correct.
You have maybe 1 or 2 players from Leicester. Like there are, if you're looking at West Ham also, there are just other teams that have better doubles in just game week 29. So that's it is a slight weakness where you're trying to fit horses for courses with your 26 wildcard, where you don't really have the best doublers in 29.
Yes.
That is my
That's right.
slight.
That is correct.
That's right. Having said that, Tony tends to score against the
He's not
tougher
talking
sides.
about Tony. He's talking about me and Rhea.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. Just generally, like you're not getting attackers who have strong doubles. And I'm going to mention the team you told me not to mention, but even Leicester have Palace away, Villa at home. Even punt on a Danny Ings with Southampton at home and Newcastle at home. Like these are the kind of picks and players you sort of enjoy in a double game week, especially if they're a differential, etc. as well. So that's correct. So what I'm saying is based on how things pan out in 29, you can actually look at how the fixtures are looking until the end of the season, and I'm not opposed to, and I think we'll almost have to take a -4, -8 in 29, especially if the bench boosting.
I think a hit is coming. Because even Tony, you have the 10 yellow cards to worry about. He has like 3 or 4 games before 29. I'd be very surprised if he isn't at least teetering on 9 by then, knowing how he plays.
Yeah. Exactly. And what is going to happen is you're going to commit to where you're using your free hit chip by this time, hopefully. So you'll pivot to a longer team move where you're making some moves, not just for 29. You're making some moves for 29 to 35, for example. That might open up then.
Correct. But why I don't like the free hit as of now in 32 is you're still getting good fixtures because you have the Brentford guys who are home to Villa. You have the Newcastle guys. If you keep Saka, I don't know if you bring in Leicester. Leicester have Wolves at home. You have Maddison and Ian Nacho that week. There are good fixtures. You are more or less covered. I think even if you take a hit, you'd move out Fernandes and Shaw for, let's say, your Trent or your Liverpool guys. You can sort of save the free hit a little bit. I want to try and save the free hit in 32 as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's where
it's just objectively speaking, I don't think it's a possibility, but if you're not selling Brighton players, no, they play in 32 as well. Doesn't matter. Brain fart. Let it be.
I'll probably sell Estupinan in 32. That's what I'm thinking to free up because
let's see now. There's a lot of cross that bridge when you get there because
a lot of it.
Exactly.
You all like
that's
to plan,
like what,
right?
1.5, 2 months away.
Yeah. Like things will change for sure.
Things will change for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up. I think
we've discussed it. Yeah,
we've discussed pretty much. I don't think we'll do a Q&A. We've already gone an hour 45.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's enough content for the week. If you liked our content, please share the work on Twitter. We'd really, really appreciate it. Just get the word out. And still just about 325 likes. Hit the like button. It doesn't take much. We'd really appreciate it. Any last words, boys?
Nothing much, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. We tried being as comprehensive as we can. Good luck on your wildcards.
Good luck.
Yes. Also want to mention that this is how much we've absorbed and processed in the last 12 hours when we potentially thought of wildcarding. We still have 2 more days to go and a lot of thoughts will evolve. So, if a couple of surprises happen, we are going to be thinking nonstop until we hit the confirm button come Saturday evening. So
yeah, I still doing the dinner date with your wife tomorrow?
No, it's cancelled.
It's cancelled. Man's got his priorities right. On that,
but I did promise her a trip because FPL in terms of massive decisions is done after wildcard, right? So I painted that picture on the other side.
I like it. All right, guys, have a great week. See you next week.